welcome to my channel, Rebirth Coaching. I'm Kathleen. I am the founder of Rebirth Coaching. And this is my first video, so I just want to introduce myself real quick and tell a little bit more about what I do. So I'm a shadow work and end of life and grief coach. What that means is that I help people navigate through these times of their lives, either is if they're going through a shadow integration, meaning they identified or they need help identifying a shadow self or a part of their shadow self that is ready to be seen and to be understood and integrated into their wholes. And by shadow, I mean a part of ourselves that have been repressed or disowned. Basically is a part of ourselves that we don't want to be, or that we don't want to see, or we don't want to recognize for whatever reason. It's not always necessarily a negative part or anything like that. It's just a part that has been disowned. It's a part that has been repressed, suppressed for whatever reason, and it doesn't go anywhere. Just because we repress and wish it wasn't there, it doesn't go anywhere. So sometimes it tends to kind of influence a lot how we behave, how we act in life, how we act towards others, how we think, and when we're not aware of it, it can cause some issues in our lives. It can block some opportunities. Sometimes it can disrupt relationships, so with ourselves and others. So I help individuals work through that. I help them with identifying it, identifying the patterns that this shadow might have played a role in, identifying some of the beliefs behind fears, and help you identify it also in your body. How does it feel in your body? How does it maybe manifest in your body, if at all? Until we get to a point where it can be integrated, it can be accepted, it has a voice, it can voice what it needs. With grief, it's any grief process is not necessarily just grief from the loss of a loved one. We're experiencing grief all the time, in a large scale or in a smaller scale, if there's such a thing. But we're experiencing grief all the time, and a lot of the times we detach ourselves. What I've experienced working in hospice and just in general in life is just we have a tendency to, we don't want to feel it, we don't want to experience, we don't want to accept it, and that's all part of the process. And we can also go through it in a way where we are conscious, that we are present, that and a lot can come up as well. So even though it might not necessarily be the focus, shadow work can occur during a grief process, because a lot of our realities get challenged, or we start to challenge or question a lot of the things that we believed, a lot of the things that we understood the world to be like. So, this is something that can be experienced in a more conscious way, and it doesn't have to. Is that because that's another thing, that if we try to suppress, if we try to repress, it's still going to come up. It doesn't go anywhere. Who haven't experienced that? You might have not been given the attention necessary to your grief, and I've experienced this myself. And then all of a sudden, I just blow off at somebody I love, or even like somebody at the supermarket or something like that. And that's usually, sometimes it's grief, it will come out in one way or the other. So if we can give it space to say what it needs to say, when it needs to say, to process, to feel, to experience in our bodies, to actually express it in our bodies, we can create a process that is a little bit more integrated, and that um, it's not kind of taking a life on its own, almost like Jekyll and Hyde. Um, so that's how I can help with loss and grief. And with end of life process, there's so much that goes on in this situation. There's grief that is happening, shadow work that is happening, because a lot will come up. I mean, we start questioning so much. From what I hear, I haven't experienced obviously, but from what I hear a lot, in what I've observed is so much is questioned about themselves, about the world, and the process itself. It can be very challenging and isolating. It can be, well, I mean, it can be very confusing. It can be a very confusing time. And there's also all the practical stuff that goes, that we might not even realize. We don't even think about it, maybe. We might not even, and I'm not talking just about, burial and cremation and what we're going to do, or there's so much more out there. There's so many other options, and throughout, from the moment that you find out about your terminal illness, or that you are aware of your end of life process, there's so much to be considered. So much that happens relationally, with yourself, with others, your body, the changes that it goes through. The options available, the practical things you need to do, like how do you want how do you want it to look like when you're passing away, when you're going through the last stages. So it can be very confusing and overwhelming. There's so much comes to the surface, so much all at once, and it can be overwhelming, and kind of crappy. I'm going to be honest with you. From what I've observed, is it's a lot. So that's something that I can help people with, and I help people with, to navigate through that process, to actually create the space to be able to really experience the process fully, with awareness, with consciousness, with presence, with compassion, and to see the possibilities. It's even though it's end of life, there's so much to be gained from it still, from the growth that occurs, and the beauty that it can come through the honoring of the process, with yourself and with others, to really give yourself that. And I know a lot of these things are very sensitive topics, and these are things that a lot of people, most of us, are not wanting to in our day-to-day to talk about, or to face it in our own lives. I mean, these are hard, difficult, not just topic experiences, and I'm all here for that. I'm a true believer that it exists, it's there, and it influences our life a lot. We're all going through these. We're all experiencing these, and we're also suffering the consequences of these experiences when we are not living it consciously, or presently, not absorbing and integrating it fully. So I think I find that it's absolutely, it changes one's life when we do. It changed mine, especially with shadow work and grief. I haven't gone through my own end of life process, but with being around individuals, I did my practicum at a hospice. So I have a master's in counseling psychology. I haven't gotten my license, but I actually was able to get all my hours and everything, but I ended up getting distracted and going to another career, and I've stayed there since. But now I'm starting the coaching business. But as part of one of the requirements for graduation, it was actually going to a practicum, doing a practicum at a site. And the one that was open for me, that was the only placement available at the time, was in a hospice. And so I did a year there. I was as a trainee therapist. And my experience there with most of my experience that I've gotten with, or a lot of it, not most, but a lot of it, like a more intense, like specific, and that's what I was there for pretty much. It was at hospice, and a lot of the times it's this kind of stuff. It comes through, and even though I haven't gotten through, like I said, the end of life process, helping individuals go through that in a more conscious level and more aware, it makes a difference. It gives, first of all, they feel heard, they feel seen, not necessarily maybe sometimes understood, because that it's a very personal experience. But you don't have to understand necessarily. It's being present, being heard, having the space to talk about it, especially because in this society we don't encourage much talk of the shadow parts of ourselves, or grief, or end of life. We don't talk. We don't even want to think about it sometimes. So we work so hard in trying to avoid and suppress. And I found that when we actually face those things, that's when so much more can come out of it. So we expand to such a level, even with end of life, because a lot of people associate end of life with being, the end of life. And there's so much growth that still can happen in that time. And I think that it's still valid. And what I've witnessed is that that's still valid. And not only your growth, but the growth of everybody around you, and that beauty that comes, that connection. So I honestly think that so much can be avoided by doing this kind of work. Avoided, I mean, by so much conflict, internal conflict, struggles, or relationally, just how we present ourselves to the world and to ourselves. I think that can create an immense impact. Imagine if everybody was doing this. I believe that we would be so much nicer to ourselves and to others. So I have a passion for this kind of work. And the road that I've taken so far that got me here right now had taught me so much. And the more I do this, I do my own shadow work, and I process my griefs and everything. The more I do it with myself and with others, the more I am thankful for the opportunity, the more I find this should be a privilege and an honor, and the more I feel like we're really making a difference in people's lives and also in the world. So yeah, this is what I do. If you're interested, please, follow me here in this channel, or you can follow me on Instagram and Facebook. I have a website I can put here somewhere. I'm still new. I'm getting familiar with all this stuff, and thankfully I have somebody to help me. So, but yeah, stay tuned. If you're interested, just reach out, let me know. I'm more than happy. I would love to hear from you. And just any questions, you can also just ask away. Okay, bye.